Moosetache. Moose had a problem. A horrible, hairy, prickly problem. It grew right below his nostrils and just above his upper lip. A moustache. Now, not a few spare of hairs or a shy little stubble. No more weak, wandering whiskers on the upper lip of this moose. No, sir. Moose had a bigger bush, brisklier, mightier moustache. But a moustache that is a blurry, snarly, mangy, messy, and it itch a lot. Sure, he plucked, he tweezed, he even clipped and snipped and teased, but his combs were still crods, and his brushes rebelled. His scissors Moose is in a fuzzy tuzzy. The mustache was completely crumping his style. He was the great Hoover, but he could barely bop and hip hop with his mustache going flippily flop. He is a wonderful chef. He simply could not forbade his with all those whiskers in the way, and he was a darling skier, but he could not. But how can he downhill racing, the mighty mustache blowing in his face? Moose had to do something, and soon. But what? After days and days of much serious thought, Moose got an idea. He crossed some hair here, crossed some hair there, and he tried his excuse me. He tried his mustache around his neck. A moose scarf. He seemed to be the ideal answer to his problems. It's so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect. But then his mustache got knotted and mangled. Ew. And horrible tangled. And those hundreds of hairs still prickled and tickled. Worse, Merce tried to barely take in a breath with all that mustache wrapped around his neck. So Moose untied and unwrapped and nodded, and gulp of fresh air. He got another idea. He parted some hair this way, parted it some that way, and he head petted all the mustache up on his head. Moustached antlers seemed to be the ideal to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, until a squashdom of squirrels and one nosy goofter moved right into the moose tail. They huddled and hoarded, furthered in, buried out. He needed to say it. It became quite crowded up there on Moose's head, and heavy, and messy. and very, very noisy. The squirreling, chitty chatty, squeezing and squawking woke Moose up every morning before the crack of dawn, and that goofer was giving the moose one hairy headache. Moose headed needed his sleep. He needed rest. He needed his privacy. Moustache antlers. Nuts, said Moose. So he unparted and unpiled, untwisted and unwind, and said, "Adieus the antler horns." But now what? What? The miserable moose took a hold of the chunk of his hair and he wrestled it. Then he roped it and tethered it, tied, tammed. Aha! Moose tail! And now that was so simple. That was so easy. That was not perfectly perfect. Talk about dizzy do. Moose didn't know what if he's going to it was coming or going. Backward, forward, this way, that way. He did not know which end was which. Moose had a bale of the tail. So he thought and thought and thought more, but no other idea was a worthy winner. Braids were a bother. A moustache sweater was too snarly. Net, not. Poor Moose. His problem was truly terrible, unbearable, just downright sad. He felt so alone. He did not know what else to do. Then, called it fate, call it destiny. It was probably dumb luck. But one day, Moose tripped over his moustache and just had one time of a duck. Oomph! Pardon me, they both said as they bumped. Then they blinked. Then they stared, and their hearts went thump, thump. She was a moose with a bufferant and bunctious out, outrageous. Well, it was just a plan, old big. Hair after hair piles, higher than high, a skyscraping dew of glory curls, a tower of snarling, twisting twirls. She was simply pleated, sumptuous, surprisingly superb. Of course, Moose had to ask how she did what she did to get that due. Miss Moustache winked and then whispered, just a little glue. So she helped he fearlessly plunge a hoof into the fat pot of the white gooey goo, and carefully, oh so carefully, they glopped and they plopped. They spatted and spreaded. They crocked and curled every truly unruly way war whiskered. Around and tweaked and twirled those horrible hairs until Moose's once mangling mess now and was now a wondrous, whining, wavy, marvelous moustache. Moose gazed in the mirror and smiled, and broad and Mosey smile. He was so happy. He was glad, just giggly and glee. He looked dashing and so handsome. Moose gushed. Is that really me? Then, with one care of hair, the moose pair googly and bopped. They skied downhill, even uphill. Then, and their cooking was hot, hot, hot. So, of course, it wasn't long after that Moose and his moustache and his beautiful bride fox trotted and tangled and whizzed down the aisle. Good, good hair days, bad hair days. They vowed to love, to cherish, and with hearts heaped with love and pots filled with goop, they both sighed, I do glue, I do glue, and promise never be apart. So simply, it was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, and it stuck.